Number one, you asked about probate.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, Chad, do you think people know what that is?
What were you to say?
Do you think people know what that is in your experience?
Unless they went to law school or had a family member pass away where they personally had to go through the probate process, very unlikely. So I think a great starting point would be to just share with everyone what probate is, and then we can talk about why it's important really to talk about why it's important to it.
Same with guardianship, I assume, right? Same it is. All right, so starting with probate. What is probate and why should you care? So if you pass away with assets in your name alone, it's very important. Assets in your name alone.
So not the joint bank account that you own with your wife, correct?
Right, joint accounts with another person, which could be your wife, or other accounts like retirement accounts that have beneficiary designations, or bank accounts that have like a TOD, POD, transfer on death, payable on death designation. They would most of the time bypass the court to get to where they need to go. For assets in your name alone, they're not going to bypass anything. They got to go through what I call the toll booth. I know you're going to steal this with your clients, and that's okay. But these assets have to go through the toll booth of probate. The toll booth. It's a great analogy because, like, how much of a pain in the ass is it when you don't have your son pass and you got to go through the toll booth and stop and you got to pay a fee, it's the line. It's a pain in the butt. So probate is a toll booth.
Like the analogy.
It's a good one. I think you're going to use it. And so what that looks like is as follows. You have to, we call it the ABCs. And it's a court process. It's in the circuit court of the county in which the person who passed away lived in upon the time of death. And you usually always have to have an attorney. So right away, you're looking at
Saying it's costly then.
Yes, it's definitely costly. So you got to open up an estate for the person that's passed away, and we call that process kind of like the ABCs. You got to first have someone appointed as, in our state, we call it the personal representative. In other states like New York, where we're licensed and have an office, it's called an executor. Most people identify with the word executor, so I just use that. That's the person who, like the name suggests, has to execute on the will if there is one, or execute on the not will if there's not one.
Now, Barry, if the person passed away, who determines who the executor is?
Great question. If there's no will, or if there's a will and it appoints somebody who's disqualified, then the state has a statute for an order of priority. So like a spouse, family member, that kind of thing. It's a long, there's a bunch of people who would be appointed. There's a bunch of qualifications and disqualifications. And so someone has to be appointed, and that person's like the CEO of the estate. They're appointed with a fiduciary duty, which I can explain in a minute, to move that estate from start to finish. The ABCs comes into play because you have to identify the assets, the beneficiaries, and the creditors of the deceased. And all my subsequent bullet points, I think, are going to kind of talk about this in some way. So I'm really glad you brought that up. That was good. That was very, 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 very good. Very good of you. So assets, beneficiaries, creditors. Assets, jumping into number 4, it is difficult to figure out what people have, when they pass away. If you don't know, if you don't have a list, if you're not organized, that executor is going to have to run around.
Absolutely. And one of the things I try and do and help individuals ahead of time, and we call it the financial junk drawer. First step of any kind of meeting with someone is let's organize your financial junk drawer so you know what you have, and more importantly, so your family will, or the person that you want to know what you have has somewhere organized where they can.
A junk drawer, you call it?
The financial junk drawer. Now, an analogy for you, maybe.
No, see, we have something similar, where we call it the snapshot. And we've had to do it after the fact, like which we're telling you not to do now. And it's expensive. It takes a lot of time. You gotta, subpoena, you gotta mail, you gotta, hassle people to follow up with you to confirm if there's an account, if there's not an account there. And as an executor, you have a duty to be correct. So you can't just half-ass it. Okay, so you got to figure out the assets, house, cars, boats, bank, brokerage, annuities, life
I can imagine it could take a lot of bit of time since people do have that duty.
Yeah, it takes time. People got to work. They're not just stopping their job to work on this full-time job. It's like a full-time job. Okay, so assets can be difficult, but also cannot be difficult if you're prepared. When you and I work together on clients, it's so much easier for us to deal with and help the client. But it isn't always that way. B is beneficiaries. If you have a will, you're choosing your beneficiaries unless you screw it up. Do an online will or something like that, which usually has a million holes in it. In cases like Prince, beneficiaries is not so easy. Where people think they want to, people are claiming to be a beneficiary. They're claiming a blood relationship that has its own kind of legal process. But basically, you either decide or the state decides for you. There's something called the law of intestate succession or the law of intestacy, which is a fancy word for the judge, the stranger, will decide for you who your beneficiaries are.
Okay. What happens if, it really wasn't according, well, if you're passed away, you wouldn't know it was according to your wishes. But what about the family members that maybe feel they're being bypassed and things aren't going according to what the deceased individual would have wanted? Do they have any say if there was no beneficiary designations or proper planning done?
So you're saying like what happens if family is not happy with the decision?
The intestate, the order of intestate.
Nothing. You're out of luck.
Right.
You're SOL. You either decide or the state decides for you. This is not a negotiation. This is not a marketplace. This is black and white. It's black and white. And that's, I think, on our list, actually, number 10 in terms of like challenging, the will. So we have your assets. You got to figure it out. Hopefully it's an easy process. Hopefully you're working with, an advisor and an attorney and a CPA together. By the way, Chad has a lot of alphabet soup after his name, and he has the CPA designation, the law degree, and the financial background. And I have a background in tax, computers, business, and law, so we make a good team.
They're a glutton for school, I guess you can say.
What's that?
We're a glutton for education.
Yep, we like punishment. So beneficiaries, can be easy. Nuclear families are easy, whether there's a will or not. Sometimes there's cases where that's not so easy. I've had cases where we've had to inject ourselves as a beneficiary and prove it, and then the case proceeds onward as normal. The C, the creditors, I find to be the most common disruption. There's always creditors. Every person who calls me says they have a simple estate. It's always simple. It's never simple. There's always creditors. FP&L, Comcast, credit cards, mortgages, car loans, student loans. If you're a little bit older, the HCA for Medicaid or insurance, health, final expenses, funeral bills, whatever it is, there's something. And so the way this kind of process works, dealing with the ABCs, is that there's something called due process. You may have heard of it. It's kind of an important thing.
Like a few times.
Due process. And so basically what that means in this context is that all these parties, these beneficiaries, the people who are not beneficiaries because you excluded them, the creditors or proposed creditors, they all have the right to notice of what's going on, and they have a right to cause a problem. And much like the presidential debate this week, probate, and I'm not going in political. I'm just saying that was a shit show. Much like that, probate provides a convenient venue for which I analogize as to a cage fight. It's a cage fight. It's like you're inviting problems, so people will be happy to cause a problem. And it has to be resolved for the creditors before the beneficiaries ever see a dime.
So differently, the creditors, I'd imagine this can get drawn out over a long period of time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Easily over a year. Easily. Um, I think new number 11 deals with one issue that I think will take it over a year easily. But I'm gonna make you wait. Not you, Chad, because you have access to the document, but the user. Yeah, that can be very long. But beneficiaries really have like equity in the estate. You know, creditors get paid first, beneficiaries gets what's left. The only other thing I'll say about the probate process is, you know, there's an order of operations. Everything's done by statute. You know, there's a certain order of creditors that get paid first, and then the general creditors, and then if there's anything left, the beneficiaries get it either by will or by statute. One more point that I get all the time is that a will does not avoid probate. A will does not avoid probate at all. It's a common misconception. So that's the toll booth of probate. It actually lasts longer than it took me to explain it, and it is expensive. It's time consuming. It's unpredictable, and it's really like you only want to do that in very few cases where it's beneficial, and mostly if you just don't like your family. So that's probate.
Haimo.